Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dodgeball podcast. Though it's been a few weeks now, I did not want to let the East Round 1 tournament that took place on March 10th pass by without a solid recap. And here to help me do that is Frankie Giannetto and Natale to cover what went down. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. And let's just go ahead and get started with a quick introduction. Frankie, you mind go ahead and going first, giving us your name, the team you play for, and your overall role in Round 1?
Sure. Thanks for having us. So my name is Frankie Giannetto. I play on Team Awesome, and I played open with them. And then for co-ed, I teamed up with some Boston friends on the team Night Shift.
Nice.
My name's Amanda Natale. I used to be a member of Davis Dodgeball. However, with all the changes that occurred after Nationals, I'm now a member of KO, although I'll only be cheering the team on from the sidelines this year as I continue to rehab my knee after ACL surgery. Because of this, I ran the women's division in the East and will do so in the next 2 rounds, as well as helped out with Open, Co-ed, and Showdown when Tim was playing.
Gotcha. And was your, you said ACL, was that dodgeball related or other sports related?
That was flag football related.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yikes, and that sucks. But, yeah.
Poor decisions.
Yeah, I mean, it's never fun to be taken out by an injury, so that's a bummer. How long till you recover?
I will make my comeback right after Nationals.
Oh, geez. So you're out all year?
All year, yep.
Oh, that sucks.
Yep.
Dang. Well, bummer. But I guess try not to spend too much time on that particular thing. I guess we'll just go ahead and get started with your first thoughts overall. I know it's after the fact, but for me, West Round 1, it felt like everyone just came out swinging. And judging from both the Dodgeball Tribune's article and Dominic's highlight video, it looks like East was no different. Would it be fair to say that was the case for you guys, that you noticed? And Frankie, go ahead and get that one first. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'll go first. So I actually would say something a little counter to that. So I think the East Coast is really different this year. You know, we've kind of had a set top 4 teams with set rosters for about 2 years now. And pretty much top to bottom, every team has changed. So you could see a lot of kind of feeling your teammates out and feeling the other teams out. And I think some of the teams sort of clicked as they went through the bracket play and really turned it on then. So there were some surprises, I think, at the top. And some teams that you would expect to be at the top that weren't quite there. So I think everyone's still excited and coming out ready to play. But I think this was kind of not a practice tournament, but there's a lot of trial and error for teams.
Gotcha. Kind of like testing the waters a little bit.
Yeah, you could tell they didn't know quite who would play corner when their one designated corner would get out, some things like that.
Gotcha. And how about you, Amanda? What did you notice?
Yeah, I agree with Frankie 100%. I think we were all interested to see what Open would look like since, as he said, 2 of the top 4 teams are completely gone. And even the other 2 top teams had roster changes in there. It was also the East's first full women's division. We had a 4v4 last year for round 3, but to be able to field a full team of 6 and know you'd be able to play with this group that you're playing with also at Nationals, it was definitely a game changer, and it was exciting to see what the different teams looked like.
Gotcha. When you mentioned 2 of the top 4 teams are gone, who are they? Davis Dodgeball and Shooters. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot. Shooters is no longer. I did not know that about Davis though. That's a bummer. And I think, did they merge together and form Anarchy? Because that's one team that I noticed looking at the bracket and looking at the recap. They just seem to dominate everything. And this can either be for either Amanda or Frankie. What was the deal with them? It looks like they did dominate everything. Was that the case, or what happened there?
So I'll let Frankie speak to Open because I didn't get the opportunity to see them much there. But we knew that coming in that they'd be good in every division they played in. They had good players all around. I think, however, to say dominate, I think they were given a run for their money in every round. The women's team had to fight their way out of the losers bracket in order to win. And in round robin or in co-ed, I got to watch that a little bit more than I did Open. they definitely, I don't even think they were the number 1 seed coming out of round robin.
Gotcha.
So I think they definitely dominated the whole tournament as a whole. They won every division, but they didn't win easily, I would say.
They fought for it. Gotcha. Okay, and that's my fault because I'm looking at the brackets and all I see is anarchy. So that's probably my poor judgment, but that's why you're here. So I appreciate that. And then Frankie, do you want to go ahead and kind of add to that for what you saw at least with the open division?
Yeah, so I'd say with open, using the word dominate honestly is a little appropriate. They pretty much kicked everyone's butt. So they were tied with us for the 1 seed going into the bracket play. And they just had a couple more 2-1 losses. So we kind of just agreed we'll be the 1 and they'll be the 2. But I think they 2-0'd us both times we played them in the winners final and then the overall finals of it. So I definitely think they came to play. And I think they shocked everyone with how well they could play together so early since they are a merged team, like Amanda said.
Right. What, and I don't know if I'll open any worms with this one. What impact did Andrew Ketchum have with them?
I'll let Amanda start because she kind of had something to say first.
I can't speak to this as much as I'm sure Frankie can again, but I did see him play in a couple games, and to say he wasn't a factor is a little ridiculous. He changes the whole dynamic on the court. He's one of the best players in the country, and then to add him to an already top 4 team that has some of the best players in the East on it definitely makes an impact to how you're playing against them. A lot of people think they'll still be number 1 without Ketchum at round 2, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the top 2. But I definitely think that Anarchy will be more beatable without him around for the later rounds.
Yeah, and that's why. And I, at the risk of like just opening a chain of comments, I really wonder, how much of a factor did he play? And because I had this same feeling. First of all, I was really surprised when I saw the picture. I was like, wow, that guy looks a lot like Ketchum. And then, okay, it is. Like, that makes sense. Put him and Billy together, and that is a team that you don't want to play against. And it looks like Tim actually just joined us. So, Tim, this is a perfect...
I was waiting for you to...
It's like...
I was about to chime in and say that Mark and I were both equally surprised, as everyone else was, with that. But yeah. Anyways, how's it going, Amanda and Frankie?
Well, surprise, everybody. Guest star Tim Wells is here with us also. Tim, real quick, go ahead and just introduce yourself, what team you play for, and what role you had with this round.
Okay. So Tim Wells, I run the East of Elite Dodgeball. I play for the Rochester Tigers, and I was running the tournament. So.
Gotcha. And I think you probably just like your ears were burning, like, oh, they're talking about Ketchum and there's some controversy. I'm going to hop on and join them. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like controversial because there's like the rules where you're not supposed to play on a top 4 team if you are on a top 4 team in another division. And so I guess we're trying to rethink that going forward because technically Anarchy wasn't a top 4 team, meaning anyone could join it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, cool. So that's just kind of like a workaround that, we're trying to explore going forward.
Gotcha. And a little technicality maybe. What were you going to say, Frankie?
Sorry, I was going to jump in and say, and, besides all that, originally he was there because one of Anarchy's players, Mike Caterino, is out with an injury right now. And then Billy wasn't supposed to be able to make the tournament. So he was kind of there to, steady the ship and make sure they, could compete as highly as they thought they were going to.
Right.
And then Billy, as the last minute, was able to come. So that's why I think Tim said it was a surprise for him and Mark because we weren't expecting Billy and Ketchum to be there that day.
Gotcha. And that's kind of a tough call because, like, you don't want to necessarily send somebody home, especially if they flew all the way across the country to play. Not gonna like defend him or make any excuses, but I can kind of see where you're maybe past the point of no return. But it'll be curious because unless I'm mistaken, Titan is ranked 7th now, so they're not a top 4 team. So it kind of maybe karma evened it out for you guys, or I don't know.
I did notice that as well. Technically, Ketchum could come out to every round if he wants right now.
We're gonna have to.
We
love
edit that out. He's great, but he can stay on the West Coast.
Are you sure you guys don't want him? Because he's you can have him.
Do you play on Titan with him?
No, I don't actually. I used to.
Okay.
So that's why you can have him. He's lost all value to me. Now now I'm just like everybody else. That's like, oh man, we're gonna have to face this guy. Great, but oh well. Anyway, just kidding, catch him. Love you, but man, you're a scary dude. So let's go ahead and go back to Open, and then Frankie. Aside from Anarchy, were there any other teams that at least gave them a run for the money, or teams that had like a really strong showing that you wanted to kind of talk about or bring up?
Yeah, so I think there's some teams that had a strong showing we should probably talk about. So, of course, it was Anarchy and Awesome in the finals. So I think that was kind of, if you put your money on it, you'd say that. But if you start going down the list after that, there was some shakeup in teams you thought might place kind of that 3rd to 6th range. So surprise number 1, I think, is definitely Z Warriors. So these are some kids out of Delaware. We met them at a charity tournament, I want to say 2 years ago. And through Kyle Roth and Colin Dowling having these kind of fake elite style tournaments they do, we got them into the 8.5 scene.
Nice. And
this is their 2nd year playing elite. They played at, I think, 1 or 2 tournaments last year, but they wound up fighting their way to 4th, which is definitely big for them. I don't think they really placed that high in anything that competitive, and they were just catching everything. Like, even when we played them, they would go up on us like 5-2 because they would just catch 2-3 throws in a row. It was pretty fun to watch.
Wow.
Tim, do you want to pick a team to highlight maybe?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously Z Warriors is like the big one that I don't think anyone really expected. Not to like downplay them, but it's just like you said, they weren't at all 3 divisions last year, at least not to my knowledge. So I mean, when I set the 2 pools, it wasn't who I was expecting, and so again, I don't really remember my exact train of thought, but I mean, I'm looking at the double elimination bracket right now, and I mean, Clutch Mode lost 2-1 on Anarchy, and so they're, I think, the only other team that I see, at least in the playoffs, that took a round off of them. And so I don't know how close that game was, because again, I'm kind of everywhere. But I mean, I don't necessarily think that Anarchy's an unbeatable team, but I don't know. I mean, Clutch Mode still, they lost 2-0 against Z Warriors in the losers bracket. So,
wow.
Mm-hmm.
It was between Clutch Mode and Aftershock placing, I think, 5th and 6th. So, yeah. So I mean, again, like between Brick Squad, Aftershock, Goat, and Arkham, I mean, those were the teams that I thought would have been, in that 4 to 7 slot. So I expected a stronger showing from Arkham. And from Goat, honestly. I mean, they knocked us out of the bracket and then got knocked out by Z Warriors. So, so that's just my take on it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and to piggyback on you there with Clutch Mode too, they're a team, like I was saying, teams are kind of feeling themselves out. You could tell they were getting really frustrated during round robin play, and during the bracket, it just kind of clicked. They really, they looked like they were in a groove. I didn't see the Anarchy game because I was playing as well, but I did see some of their other games, and they looked like they were pretty cleaned up by the time the bracket hit.
Gotcha. And forgive me, Clutch Mode, have they been around for a while, or are they fairly new?
Well, this is their 2nd year, and so Chris DeJesus, the captain of Clutch Mode, and so he is the captain of the Stevenson NCDA team. And so they went to Chicago for UDC last year. And so, Chris is kind of what the team's built around, I would say. Obviously, everyone else on his team has gotten, significantly better over the last year. But, he's kind of a jack of all trades, where he'll catch, he'll throw, he'll make, those plays kind of thing. And so they beat us in the first round of the playoffs, and I didn't even make it for that game, so like I don't know how close it was. I'm looking at it and it says 2-1, but I mean, they can upset teams pretty heavily. So
yeah, and they have a lot of the kids on Clutch Mode play with some of the Z Warriors guys, like when they practice together locally. So it's another team that they catch a lot.
Gotcha. And Amanda, you said that was your focus mostly with running women's and co-ed, or did you get to catch any of what took place during Open?
My focus was mostly on women's and
Gotcha.
co-ed. I didn't see a ton of Open. But I mean, just looking at the bracket, you got to give a shout out to Brick Squad. They didn't even make the top 4 last year, and obviously adding Jeff helped them to make it to the top 3. So,
yeah, funny little fact about Brick Squad: they only lost to one team in Open, and they lost to us 3 times. So they were not happy about that. I'm sure they'll be coming swinging at us next round.
They're gonna hold a grudge.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely holding a grudge. I mean, we've got the family mix in there, and yeah.
Yeah, actually,
is it Narcissus on Brick Squad too, or no?
Yeah, Nar's on that team as well. So some old Team Awesome players.
Exactly.
That I was gonna ask real quick. So you know how, like, as much as I hate to admit it, everybody on the West Coast expects Doom versus Rice. Like, that's just been the precedence for years now. Is there something similar now with the East? Is there like 2 teams where you kind of expect them to be first or second, or they have that rivalry where everybody wants to watch those 2 play in this group here?
I think everyone expects Awesome to be in the finals. I have for years, and I don't expect it to be any different now. Obviously, I think Anarchy could potentially be up there. However, if they have the team without Ketchum there next round, it wouldn't shock me to see a Brick Squad Awesome finals, or even if Clutch Mode is on their game, Clutch Mode Awesome. So I think Anarchy Awesome wouldn't be surprising, but I wouldn't throw out some of the other teams that are in the top 4 or 5 to make it up there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak too much about my team either, but there were 2 teams that I would say were a little disappointing in round 1, who I wouldn't be surprised if they snuck up in round 2. So Arkham, they had a little bit of a roster change, but last year they gave everyone hell all year. You know, they had a round where they got second in both divisions. And then Aftershock is always a team that's right there in about 5th place. And this year they added 2 upgrades, and they still came in about 5th place. So I think they'll probably sneak into a top 4, if not next round, probably round 3.
Gotcha. So it's not like, I mean, it's never this way, but it's not like written in stone where, you know, these top 4 teams, 5 teams are going to be what you might see the rest of the year.
There's way more parity this year than years prior, in my opinion.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's that seems to be the case with West as well. I mean, no offense by any means, but I think a lot of people were surprised to see Gridlock take 3rd, because usually you would think Titan would be on there or Rainbows, but that's not the case. And so, you know, positions 3 through 7 are going to be, as Tyler put it, a dogfight, which is really cool. So kind of cool to see that might be the case with East as well. It's still any team's game, and kind of want to echo what you said, Amanda, not to keep digging the Ketchum hole, but I'm really curious to see how Anarchy does without him. And I don't want to take away from what they did. Obviously, I'm not going to say like, oh yeah, Ketchum's the only reason why they won. But yeah, he's too much of a player to definitely not change the overall scope of how a team performs. So I'm curious as well.
If you look at if you look at No Sting, I mean, they didn't have Ketchum playing for No Sting, and they still like won there too. So I mean, the way that I look at Anarchy is they have a lot of very talented players, but you know, as a first year kind of playing, you know, the synergies might not be there, and so you know, it leaves a team ripe to be upset on occasion, where they just go against a team where they haven't really played them before, or you know, momentum swings, that kind of thing. And that's something that, like, with Team Awesome, you know, they're very consistent. And so, like, they're almost always in the top 4, like, mostly top 2. And so, you know, that's something where going forward, especially with, you know, Billy being, was he North Carolina, right? So, you know, just, like, not playing with teams, like, you know, Tigers has the same thing right now as, like, you know, a couple of us are in Boston, a couple of us are in Rochester, like I'm in Maryland, like we don't play that often. So like sometimes we're on it and sometimes we aren't. So,
gotcha.
You know, a lot of that can be said for other teams. Like, so, I mean, like, I know some people thought that GOAT would be higher because, you know, one of the Lachies is on their team, but I mean, I didn't really see them much. They knocked us out, but yeah, it was like weeks ago, so I don't really remember it that well.
Yeah. I absolutely think Anarchy can win without Ketchum, but I just know that without Caterino as well, it's just a different team.
Yeah, it's a different dynamic, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can give my perspective playing them too. So when you're game planning to play a team like that, and they have Ketchum there as well, that's just like one more person that can change a game by themselves. So I think they're going to really have to lean on each other more in the next round when they don't have kind of like Ketchum insurance.
Ketchum
I think it would
insurance.
be pretty funny way to put it.
Gotcha. Well,
But no, it wasn't just him. I would expect to see them in the finals again. Just hopefully it goes differently next time.
yeah, gotcha. Maybe, like I said, probably a different dynamic or style of play, but still one to contend against.
Yeah.
For sure. So let's go ahead and kind of venture into women's, Amanda. So you kind of said that Anarchy wasn't as dominant in women's. There was more of a battle. I think you said KO. Looks like KO knocked him out at first.
So KO, I think, definitely gave them a good fight. KO lost Meg Fricker in round robin to a knee injury. So I think had Meg been able to play for the rest of round robin and the bracket play, it might have been the same outcome, but it might have been different as well. Venom also was a huge shocker. They had quite a few women that were new to Elite this year, but they totally showed they shouldn't be underestimated. They knocked Anarchy into the losers bracket. So they were definitely a team that I think people might have come in underestimating and showed that they shouldn't be. And then Precision Dodgeball didn't perform as well as they had hoped, but they have a pretty stacked team. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them do much better in round 2.
Precision. I'm seeing a lot of their Facebook stuff. Whoever's doing their social media is killing it.
Yep.
Yeah, they're killing it.
And I just wanted to say, like, Venom's logo is sick looking. This Medusa looks like that's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Very cool. So going back to or staying on women's, and that was my mistake. I think I said earlier KO knocked out Anarchy. That wasn't the case. It was Venom, as you said, Amanda. I was just kind of looking at the bracket again. Were there any other teams that were kind of like a surprise, good or bad?
No, there was Clutch Mode was mostly new as well, and then the other Skills was the 6th team. They both had their games and their moments where they were definitely making plays, and you were looking for some upsets to happen. But I think Venom was the biggest shocker.
Nice. Just looking at Tyler's article here, and it looks like just when KO appeared to have the championship wrapped up in the third game of the second set between the two teams, Anarchy's Elia Roth came up with a huge catch and then proceeded to close out the tournament victory with teammate Michelle Radley. Did you, by chance, get to catch that?
Yes, absolutely.
You mind walking us through that?
Walking you through it?
Yeah, just like what kind of set the stage and.
So if I remember correctly, KO. KO had 3 people in versus just Elia, and like you said, both teams had 1 loss, both teams had 1 win, so whoever won would win. And 2 teammates who have played together for a while, Kate Cairns and Emily Hotz, decided that they would do kind of a throw at Kate. Kate was right in front of Elia, and Hotz was cross court, and they decided they'd team up on her, and she caught Hotz's ball and Kate's ball missed, so Hotz was out and Michelle came in, and it was 2-on-2. And I don't think there were any more catches. I think they just hit out both Kate and I forget who the third person left in was, but yeah, we had a 3-on-1 advantage, and Elia made the catch that changed the game.
Oh, that's awesome on the one side, but on the other side, that's gotta hurt. You're like, if my ball just hit that person, it might have been different. I hate that. Yeah,
there was a lot of back and forth. Meg Fricker and I were kind of hanging out on the sidelines, and we'd look at each other at one point thinking it was over, and then KO would make a play that would turn it around, and then we'd make a play that we were like, oh, why did that just happen? So there was a lot of back and forth in the last couple games.
That's funny. When I was interviewing Monique about co-ed for West, she was kind of saying, like, with every play, she'd be like, okay, this team's going to win. and then something else would happen. Like, okay, no, they're gonna win now. Like, and then somebody would get out. And like, oh, well, now we're back to their winning. And it's just like that back and forth, like seesaw of like who's actually gonna win.
Yeah,
it's always exciting when that happens. Like you, even as a spectator, you want to watch an exciting, close game, not like a 20-second blowout. So
yeah,
it's cool to hear that was the case. So I think we covered some teams there for women's, and a couple of players. Were there any other players that just kind of stood out and they just showed up and were bringing their A game that you noticed?
I know you mentioned her coming back into the game, but Michelle Radley was huge for Anarchy. And just throughout the day, she had so many catches. I think anytime I watched an Anarchy game, she had at least one catch, if not more. She was just on fire that day.
Nice.
It's not just that day. That's what she's known for.
Yes. But I think this was Elite's first experience with her at a tournament, and we knew that's what she was known for, and she showed why.
Nice. So she was just consistent across the board. Like, this is the standard that you'll see from her. Awesome. Let's see. And I'm just assuming, forgive me, but Frankie and Tim, did you guys catch any of the women's events that you wanted to kind of bring up?
I felt like when I was watching, I always saw a catch at least like every game. So I'm curious if there was.
I think a part of that was we didn't have a neutral zone in women's, and so we were throwing from a center line. So I think adding in the neutral zone in rounds 2 and 3 will also change the way the game is played, the pace of the game, maybe lessen the number of catches.
Is there a reason why there was no neutral zone?
I think we were just rusty.
Yeah.
Totally forgot.
There was some mention of it at the beginning of the day, and there was just so much happening and getting things ready, and it just kind of slipped through us, and someone else mentioned it like second to last game of round robin, and at that point it was like
too late.
We've been playing this way the entire tournament. It doesn't make sense to go to a neutral zone now.
Yeah, that probably upset a lot of people consistency wise. So
yeah,
gotcha.
I mean, I would say that I think that going forward, so I don't know if this was mentioned, but I believe that women's on the East are getting rings for the championship, like whoever wins the top 4, and so that going forward, I expect like women's to get stronger going forward, especially for that reason. And so another thing is that May 4th, which is round 2, that's the same weekend as the National Dodgeball Festival in Barrie, Ontario. And so I would expect that the Canadians that we had come out for Open, Women's, and No Stink to not be there for round 2. And so, it might leave Anarchy a little bit weaker, not having Lauren. So yeah, just throwing that out there that, they may not be that top team, at round 2. So
yeah, I've heard a couple Anarchy players won't be there at round 2.
Yeah, I've heard several. So
it'll be an interesting change just all across the board, not just with Open then, as far as round 2 goes. Yeah, it's always the case, and like I'm really curious. I don't mean to keep going back to the West, but it's just my perspective. I'm really curious to see how the shift to Portland changes the scope a little bit. Like, are we going to see more, Pacific Northwest teams show up and less LA and maybe less Arizona players? Or, it's hard to believe that the entire showing from round 1 is going to end up at Portland. So that always changes things up too. So I'm curious just to see how that will turn out. So I can totally understand how the festival might impact that event for round 2 for you guys.
Well,
From
yeah,
an East Coast perspective, Tim, this is the biggest East Coast in Boston we've had, right? Because that's normally a far travel for most teams.
In Boston, I'm not entirely sure. We had 20 for Open and then 20 for co-ed. I thought that last year we had some that were in like the 24 or 27 range. I could be wrong, but I thought that last year we had more teams show up for co-ed. But again, I could be wrong. I mean, we're like, to put it in perspective, like each Elite East round is bigger than like the first nationals at Vegas. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same amount of teams pretty much, like 20 teams in each division. And so, aside from not having pinch, like it's so much going on that, it's really easy to miss a lot of these like big plays kind of thing. So
Gotcha. So let's go ahead and segue in now into co-ed no sting. And Amanda, you can start off. Same question as with open and women's. Any teams aside from Anarchy that really gave them a run for their money and kind of just showed up all around that you noticed?
I think Awesome obviously gave them a run for their money. They took a game off of them at the finals there. But I don't know. I didn't see a ton of their games. I was following Night Shift around since that was kind of the conglomerate of the people I used to play with and still play with a little bit here, and Frankie and some of our Team Awesome friends. But Brick Squad was also having a great day. There's, as we were saying earlier, there was a couple times where I thought they were out of it, and one of their girls would make a great catch, or yep, Frankie. So I didn't get to see a ton of the teams. Aftershock there again was also doing really well. Not surprising, they always bring it. But the one big one that I think a lot of people are sometimes surprised made it that as far as they did, but doesn't ever really surprise me is Tigers. Tigers, I think, made it into the top 4, and I'm sure Tim has heard the surprise before from people of like Tigers made it into the top 4, but it's really not surprising to me. I've played against them in a number of tournaments, elite and non-elite, and they are deadly with the no sting. So
nice.
I don't know if Tigers ever got a chance to play Anarchy, but they're one that when we get matched up against them, I'm always nervous.
Fair enough.
Yeah, their game with Anarchy I think was 2-1. And Tigers are a great example of when we switched to no sting, there's so many teams that just like 3 people on their team turn into scary throwers. We're an 8.5. It's just kind of normal. But like, Tim, you can talk about this way more since it's your team. But Matt with the no sting balls, he's a force. Like he really impacts.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to watch him be like, oh man, like 8.5 is not my game. I'm like, dude, you're playing fine. And then he goes to like no sting and he like transforms into a totally different player. And so it's funny because we have like a throwing order, and I mean, it's kind of like funny and humbling, but it's like I pass the balls off when we go to no sting because it's just like I am not the cannon on no sting. And so like the backstory to that is that we play every Friday in Rochester. We play just no sting, and so like we all started playing with no sting. Like that was how we got into the game. And so like we've been playing no sting for just like years, and so UDC is always a big showing for us. But yeah, so I think we made 2nd or 3rd that one time that we had a round in New York City. And so it's not like it's the first time for Tigers getting into the top 4. But yeah, going forward, I would expect us to stay, since we have our main lineup's going to stay the same this season for once. So
you'll have some consistency and all that good stuff going into round 2 and 3 in nationals.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, again, like it's always weird with college teams because when people graduate, they go back to where they were from, and so we have like a player that is now playing in the North. We have a player that I think we have 2 players that are playing in the North now just because they moved after graduating, and so I am no longer in Rochester. Matt's no longer in Rochester. So, I mean, it's always interesting with teams that, people move away and trying to keep that dynamic together. I mean, Team Awesome's going through the same thing right now. So,
we never practiced anyway.
Of course.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think looking at the bracket, if I had to pick my top 6 for no sting going in, this is probably the 6 I would have picked. So Anarchy, Brick Squad, Awesome, Tigers, Night Shift, Aftershock. I think that's who I would have picked to come in the top 6, so I'm not too surprised by that. But there were some teams who maybe it's their first elite, or they're pretty new to it, that made some runs. I see Mount Olympus won a couple games, which is great for them because they're really passionate about the sport right now, and they're always trying to bring 2 teams and things like that. So I think they're doing pretty well there. I see Goat made a little bit of a run in no sting, which they're not known for doing, so that's awesome. I'm sure that was probably led by Spencer, Lopez and Lewis really going off. And then, of course, Brick Squad's the other one to highlight. They're so good at no-sting. I wouldn't be surprised if they steal round 2 or 3 and win one of them outright.
I was surprised. I didn't see them play at all, but DIY was the second seed going into the bracket. And I think they got knocked out by Tigers, so not surprising there. But I was really shocked to see. They must have played really well in round robin. I just didn't get a chance to see it.
Yeah, so that team has Ed Aponte, formerly of Team Awesome and now in Aftershock, and then some of the Space Cadet guys, and then Michelle Radley played with them as well. So that's definitely a pretty good team, and I know Ed was really disappointed with how it went during the bracket.
Gotcha. I was looking at looking for specific shout-outs. But yeah, same thing. Sorry, Tim. The Tigers also turned some heads with their 4th place finish in co-ed, so I thought that was kind of funny.
It happens.
Let's see. And I guess what we can do, we'll start with co-ed, and this could be anybody's perspective. And I kind of asked you this, Amanda. Were there any plays or any just situations that happened that just stand out the most? You're like, oh man, I can't believe this happened.
The one that just sticks out to me was when Night Shift was playing Brick Squad, because I believe they were the ones. Oh no, when we were playing them and still in the winners bracket, the top of the bracket, we were up 2-on-1 against Joanne Esteban, and she caught whoever it was. I don't even remember. Frankie, do you remember? It wasn't you.
No, it was not it.
But
thanks.
She caught one of. I think she caught maybe TJ Manning and brought in one of the guys, and they beat us. So that's the one that really sticks out to me.
The Brick Squad Awesome games are probably fun to go back and watch. I know there was a lot of controversy around a play with Drew Giovinco. He caught a ball and then kind of strutted out of bounds after he caught it, and it got called as a momentum play. So I know that was something that was pretty controversial.
Oh boy, we all know that Giovinco strut that he.
I think it was Brick Squad. It might have been Anarchy, but it was one of those 2 teams, and I have it on video somewhere on our page. It'd be pretty funny to go look at it.
So he strutted. He didn't stutter or stumble out of bounds. He just.
It was kind of in the motion of the catch. It was. I didn't ref. If I was reffing, I probably would have called him out. But the refs said it was part of momentum, and I think the team he was playing was pretty upset. I have to look up whether it's Brick Squad or Anarchy, but I remember that sticking out as kind of the game stops for 2 minutes and everyone's talking.
Oh, I'm sure deliberating. It's only just one of the biggest catches out there, so no pressure to get it right or wrong. Let's see. What I'm noticing from Tyler was. Anarchy won in convincing fashion thanks to Brandon Kelly making yet another clutch catch in a big game. Brandon is a great player who has been overlooked too long, which I doubt, but per this article, if he continues to perform at this level, that will be impossible. I don't think he's overlooked, and that's me coming from the West Coast, and I got to listen to his podcast on David Tate's. It's this is definitely somebody you do not want to sleep on ever. Is that the case with you guys? Did you see that catch? And
yes, I'll take this. That was against Awesome in the Open Finals. And it was 2-on-1, me and Drew against him, and Drew and I teamed through, and I hit him and he caught Drew's ball. And I don't know how Mikey had a ball so fast, but he just came running in and kind of knocked me out of the air. It's cool to watch. It's the end of Dominic's highlight video.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it was, it wasn't like it was a game deciding catch because it was only probably the first game of that series, maybe the second. But it sealed that game, and then the other game wasn't close. So it's always cool to see other clutch catchers doing things like that. So definitely happy that Brandon's getting some recognition. He's always, he's someone you're scared to throw out. You don't put one ball on him and feel good about that.
Yeah, I think to say he's underestimated is a little silly. I think most people know him from Nationals last year, where he made, I don't even remember who it was against, but he turned a game in the bracket playoffs at Nationals with a big catch. So I think maybe they might be referring to like maybe he wasn't ranked as highly in the Elite East as people might think he would be, but I don't think anyone ever underestimates him.
Gotcha. And that, I mean, it's like the case for any of the rankings. There's what about this guy, or what about that guy, or so and so should be ranked number this, and
right.
It's just it's great that it's there, and I think once players are showing up and these things are happening, it'll probably slowly start to become more, I don't say accurate, but you'll probably see less instances like this where a player who people do not snooze on are ranked adequately or appropriately. So I just kind of wanted to read that. And then also in Open, looks like Anarchy was propelled by an MVP performance from Brandon Kelly, who made multiple clutch catches to secure the victory. So if people are snoozing on him at this point, then that's at your own peril. Like, you're just silly to be doing that. Let's see. I think we covered Open pretty well. I'm just like looking at some of the team pictures. Ashley Cook, she's East, or I thought she was North?
She was North, but I don't think the North could get a women's team or women's division together. They just, I don't think, had the numbers to make it happen. So she joined Anarchy. I ought to mention her earlier when you were asking about players that really brought their A game, because she definitely was like the driving force for Anarchy. I think she set the pace of like every game that she was a part of. She kept the other team on their toes because she was the right corner. So she was just constantly pump faking or doing cross court throws. So she definitely, and I mean, I didn't see Anarchy night shift, never played them in co-ed, so I didn't really see them play. But she, I'm sure, added to their team victory in co-ed as well.
Gotcha. Now, is that going to be like a catch 'em situation where we're going to find out how she does with her North team, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that because I thought she was a member of Boosh, but I don't know how that works with, I don't know if the same, since we don't technically rank co-ed, or there's not points for co-ed, I don't know how that works. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. I forgot. For me, every division counts. It always counts. So I forget that co-ed doesn't technically count as far as like points go. So I guess it's not as big of a deal as Open Anarchy, but yeah, good for her. Like, obviously she's a standout player, so I was surprised to see her on the roster as well for an East round. The one thing I did want to bring attention to, and maybe Frankie, this is more for you, is there's an excerpt here that says, also a playoff one-on-one between brothers Jeff and Matt may have been the longest 1v1 in Elite history. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So I figured that would come up, so I pulled up the video and watched it. I didn't watch all of it, but I watched the first 5 minutes of it. So that game went for over 14 minutes.
Wow.
And as the theme was for Awesome vs. Brick Squad that day, they were up on us, and they let us get some catches. And really, it went from, I think they were up 5-2 on me and Drew Drievinko, and I got a catch and brought someone in, and then Drew got a catch and brought someone in. And it turned into Matt versus Jeff at the end. And that was at about 3 minutes in on the video. And so this video went for 14 minutes. So we had about a 10-minute match of just Matt versus Jeff. So I would hope that's the longest match in Elite history, because that would delay tournaments significantly if that happened often. And the real big standout there, and I was talking to Jeff about this today because I figured it would come up, I think both of them were afraid to go for a catch and make a play, even though it was one-on-one and 8.5. So you really just saw them throwing the ball and blocking, and then the other person would throw and block. And so the crowd goes from really excited to see two brothers go at it to just kind of all right, when's this going to end? And then Jeff drops his ball and kind of goes for a catch but doesn't commit, and the crowd's like, oh! And then a minute later it's like, oh my God, when's this going to end? And so it went like that for a while until I think Jeff dropped a block or stepped out of bounds. I'd have to go back and watch the end, but Jeff kind of beat himself. So it was really funny that such an intense match had such a lame conclusion of,
After all that, it's just something simple like accidentally going out of bounds or something.
Yeah, it was It was fine to watch from my end because we were still up at that point. So even if we lost that game, we had another game to go.
Right.
But I'm sure, in the moment, Jeff and Matt were just like, I don't want to be the one to make a mistake and lose to my brother.
Oh man, yeah. So you're just adding another layer of the stakes there. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I think, it's a good one to watch.
I think after 5 minutes, it's just like, okay, somebody do something, please. Like my emotions can't handle this. Want to move on. Want to move on with my life. Like just something happen. So those are always fun for a little while. Then just like, geez, okay, let's move on. One thing that I did not even think about covering was the showdown. I'm assuming that took place at East, right? Before I get too far ahead of myself.
It did. Yeah.
Any one of you guys want to go ahead and just comment on that real quick, like major players, how it turned out?
Yeah.
That kind of nature.
So we always have more people who want to do showdown than we can field. Every year we turn people away because we've just filled up the bracket. And it was no different this year. I would say some of the bigger surprises of just people who got knocked out. So TJ Manning knocked out Drew Geo. And while TJ is a teammate of mine, hearing that matchup, I would have originally assumed Drew would have taken it. But TJ, while this is his second year with the league, he's just getting better every round. So not surprised that he won, and wouldn't be surprised if he continues to make it pretty far in the next round. Brian Keneally, who is the biggest jokester of Elite, took out a Keel.
That's what I would have.
Who's one of the best dodgers and has a great arm. So I think that one was a complete shock to most people.
Biggest shock.
And then Ed Aponte got knocked out by Mike Fiore, which I don't think anyone was expecting. But when Mike is on and having a good day, that's what can happen. I think the one matchup that a lot of us are looking forward to the most is next round, Mike McGee and Tim get to match up. So that should be an interesting one.
Tim Wells and Mike McGee?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people think that Mike's going to go all the way, but I think if Tim's having a good day and is on, and if Mike doesn't know where the line is and steps over it like he's supposed to do, you never know what's going to happen.
Gotcha. Real quick, you said Brian Keneally? Keneally.
Yes.
Is the dodgeball a joker, huh?
Oh yeah, he's the one that's got the boombox playing music to kick everyone out, and
I wonder how he would compare against David Benedetto, because I think
David's got Brian beat hands down, but Brian is like a miniature Dave for the East Coast.
Nice.
What team is he on again?
Brian?
Yeah.
I think he's on Josh Margararu's team, and I think their name this year is
Massacre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So formerly Badgers.
Formerly Badgers, now Massacre. Yes.
Nice. Yeah, I was as soon as you said the dodgeball jokester, I was like, is he though?
Sorry, East Coast jokester.
Fair enough. Yeah. Now they have to battle though. They have to duke it out, and there can be only one. So
it would probably be pretty hilarious to watch it happen.
One of those things where I will pay money just to watch this because it'll play out and be awesome. Well, cool. So I guess you said Mike McGee may not be the one that would take it all. Do you have an idea of who might, or is that just too much of a speculation at this point?
I mean, I would not be at all be surprised if Mike made it into the finals. But TJ Manning, if he's on, he is a former baseball player, so he's got a pretty good arm. Zaps, if he's having a good day, you never know what's going to happen. Chris De Jesus from Clutch Mode still in there, and if he's catching everything, who knows? Tim's obviously a force to be reckoned with. You never know what's going to happen with him. He's super dodgy and can get smaller than almost anyone I've ever seen behind that ball, and it's got a great arm. So I don't know. I think any of those guys could be in the top spot at the end of the day.
Nice. Yeah, and Tim, well,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Steve Bauman from the Tigers makes it at least into the top 4. He's always like the last guy in on the Tigers, and so he's always a really, really good 1v1 person. And so, yeah, I mean, not a lot of people know him for being like a solo guy, but he totally is. So
He's the guy that throws with 2 arms.
Exactly.
Like at the same time, or left and then right, or right and then left?
I'll do like a left and a right.
I guess I could have said one at a time. That probably would have been easier, but I was just picturing somebody like straight up like Hulk double throw. I'm like, oh, that's okay. I can.
He kind of whips his one arm and then throws like normal with the other. It's cool to watch. It's annoying to try to catch.
I'll bet. I mean, it's enough to just track one ball, let alone 2, especially if they're gonna come at you one at a time from the same source. Like it's a tall order. And I was gonna say, Tim, you're also very sneaky. Just how you kind of snuck into this podcast here. I can't. I'm not gonna let that go.
I mean, you said like the time, and then like I went to go, like I thought it was a Facebook chat, and so then I went to like your chat, and it was like, oh no, it's an app, and so it's like, oh. So yeah,
probably.
My apologies for that.
Oh, no worries.
This is a professional podcast.
Yeah. How dare you?
Well, the last
sir?
time, didn't we do the last time in a Facebook audio or something?
Oh, I'm always changing it up, trying to find the best way. I know that Google Hangouts was the way I was anticipating doing this with 2 people. Then when it came to 4, I was like, well, I should probably try something else. And shout out to Serge Ferrari for recommending this platform. Zoom is pretty awesome. I'm digging it so far. So appreciate you guys converting and doing whatever you had to do to hop on. And before we sign off, because I think that covered most of, at least from my perspective, and I definitely appreciate you guys coming out here and giving me an idea of what took place. First of all, yeah, I'm obviously very biased towards the West, but that's all I know. So I'm happy to be able to get some more insight and find out a little bit of the who's who and the what's what. But before we sign off, I'll just kind of like leave this to you guys individually. We can start with Frankie. Anything else that may have stood out or that you want to kind of talk about before we end this?
No, I think a good way to summarize this was I don't think across either open or co-ed, and probably not women's either, that how the bracket came out in round 1 will happen again in rounds 2 and 3. I think it's going to be very different each round. I think this is going to be a really fun year for the East, and I'm really looking forward to being a part of that.
Nice.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Frankie. I think, as we've kind of been saying throughout this whole podcast, I think a lot of the same top teams will be in those top spots, but I think the order that they came in this first round will be slightly different. And as we've said too, just that some of the teams who maybe didn't perform as well this round will have it figured out by next round and might move up a couple spots as well.
Nice. How about you, Tim?
Yeah, I guess, mine's from the more operational side. But, I mean, it was really good to see, like, the designated refs come through. And, it's always the worst when you have people that are like, oh, we don't have refs on this court. Well, like, having the accountability was huge, not only for, just the progression of the tournament itself, but, just not having people like stopping play, you know what I mean? And it's interesting because like we're talking about round 2 right now, which is coming up, I think May 5th. And like Mark and I were kind of toying with the idea of making it a 2-day tournament. And so I think that like going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if, that eventually happens at some point. Not to say that it would or anything, but like I know that we're trying to get pinch to happen for round 2, and so like there's no way to make that happen unless you did it in a 2-day tournament, you know what I mean? Right. So like it's interesting trying to like make all of the puzzle pieces fit, you know what I mean? So it's definitely like I always feel just like really humbled after a tournament, like watching it be successful. And I definitely need to thank Amanda for everything. I was really able to delegate to her like the entire day, and so I didn't get a chance to thank you, but thank you.
No worries. Happy to help.
Awesome. Yeah, you definitely do have a little bit of a different perspective because I imagine you're like the first one to show up, last one to leave, and you're putting in all the extra time. So having dedicated reps, just from my perspective of knowing where I needed to be, when I needed to be there, and who I was supposed to rep with was great. Because instead of just picking up my whistle and finding out what court needed me or what court needed somebody, on my, not to sound like a jerk, but on my own, generosity, like when I wasn't, going to the bathroom or listening to music or in my own head doing, thinking about the dodgeball game, I felt like that really made just the entire feel of the tournament just step up drastically. So I love what everyone's doing and finding out, what pieces of the puzzle actually need to be prioritized and which ones are going to, just make us that much better all around. So it's awesome. And for what it's worth, like it sounds like East Coast, or East, I should say, is right aligned with West, and all the other regions are just going to get better and better and better, and it's just going to make nationals that much more exciting. So,
yeah,
I'm really looking forward to it. I wasn't able to be at nationals last year, so so I'm really happy for this year's.
Awesome, cool. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and end it there. Alrighty, so there you have a recap of the Elite Dodgeball East Round 1 tournament that took place March 10th and kicked off the Elite season. I do want to apologize for the delay, but between coordinating times with everybody, covering, and even playing in the West region last weekend, some time has passed. But I'll definitely do my best to be more on the ball for the upcoming ones while they're still fresh in the players' minds, so to speak. For those of you that may have listened to the West Region 1 recap that I released this past weekend, I do want to see how you felt about the style and format of this one in particular. While I did enjoy breaking down the West recap into 3 segmented parts with 3 individual people, I think having everyone all together really keeps the conversation going, and it just flowed better. So if you liked it, let me know. If you hated it, let me know. Or if you have ideas on how to make the next one better, let me know. Till then, have a great evening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the exit now in 3, 2, 1. Let me remember how to breathe. Simple humaning 101, dude. All right. 3, 2,